And welcome to the first of our review and recap series on YouTube. The purpose of this series is just to give you really short videos that give you revision material on each of the key components of the crime and punishment exam. So if we start off at the very start of our crime and punishment topic, we need to look at medieval Britain. This first video is all about what medieval Britain was like. So without further ado, let's get started. In medieval Britain, medieval England was a Christian country. Now, the type of Christianity that they followed was called Roman Catholicism, so they were Roman Catholic, and they followed the word of God. The God's representative, on earth was the Pope, and you were expected to live a very good life that was in line with the Christian teachings. If you did that and you followed the rules, then you could expect to get into heaven. However, if you lived a sinful life full of crime, you should expect no mercy when you die. What was society like? Well, society was split up into different categories. Of course, at the top you had the king. Now, the king believed that he was appointed by God, therefore he had divine rights. So only God, could judge the king. Beneath the king, you had different sections of society. Just underneath the king, you had members of the clergy, so those who were religious officials, such as bishops. You also had the lords and the nobles. The lords and the nobles are the ones that own the majority of the land in England. At the bottom of this triangle, you get the villeins or the peasants. Now, the villeins are the majority of the population, and they very much know their place in society. The rules and law and order was there to make sure that peasants stayed in their place in society and did not challenge this structure. Society was also patriarchal. That means that men were in control and made the laws, and this was especially prevalent in the homes. The king owned all of the land in England. However, he could not look after it himself, so he appointed sheriffs, who were like the king's agents, to look after a certain county, and they were then split up even further into what were known as hundreds. Medieval villages were very small places, which meant that everybody tended to know each other, and outsiders were viewed with suspicion. Farming. Life revolved around farming in medieval England. This was because farm animals were very important. They were a source of trade, money, food, and therefore, if anything was to happen to these, it would cause a significant problem. Poor harvests, led to a massive pressure and suffering. If a harvest failed for whatever reason, it often led to a huge increase in crime because people became desperate. More people were falling into debt, which was also a crime in medieval England, and it led to tensions, which often led to violent crime. You also get other pressures, which led to an increase in crime, such as the Black Death in 1348 and 49, which led to high vagrancy because people were wandering between villages, looking for work in different areas, because workers and peasants were now in demand, so they could leave their village and try and get some better work somewhere else. War. War was prevalent to the medieval era. So many people knew and understood bloodshed. For example, you had the Peasants' Revolt, the War of the Roses, and the French and Scottish wars as well with England. Okay, so war and violence was nothing new to medieval people. Lastly, you get tools. Because farming was such a big part of medieval life, and because the majority of the population were the villeins or peasants, it meant that many people had easy access to tools such as axes, knives, hammers. Of course, all of these, plus the tensions of things like strip farming, the Black Death, poor harvests, mean that when tensions boiled over, it was very easy for those arguments to escalate into violent acts of crime. Of course, you also had very poor communication at the time. The majority of news is spread through word of mouth, not through the printed press, which doesn't come in until the early modern period, which means that rumours spread very quickly, meaning that crime often gets very confused, and it's very difficult for people to understand why things have happened. So in summary then, medieval life was tough for the majority of people. They were simply doing what they could to survive. For those people at the bottom of society, the villeins and peasants, the majority of laws and punishments were designed to make sure that they stayed in their place. Okay, so that wraps up the medieval Britain overview one. The next video that we'll record will talk us through what medieval crime was like. Thank you.